Climate science expert Sweta Chakraborty joins us now for more on this. She focuses on risk and behavioral science. So let's talk about the behavior around climate change. Here we see mayors motivated to act, but we've seen the Paris deal. I myself have covered some of the UN COP conferences. What can the mayors achieve?
Right. This is a critical role that mayors can play given the lack of global leadership that we're seeing to fight the climate crisis. So last month was the UN Climate Action Summit, and the chairwoman now for the C40 Cities Forum is Mayor of Paris, Anne Hidalgo. And so she said how the meeting last month at the UN was actually a failure. And what ended up happening was the ineptitude of global leaders coming together and not actually reaching the agreements and action that were required to address the climate emergency effectively. So going into this summit, you can see what the attitude was like by local leaders, like the mayor. And so the idea was to bring 94 cities and mayors together to really reach a conclusion that was going to be actionable. And that was the purpose of the summit. And
that is important. I don't want to understate that action at the local level, at the city level. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC there, she blamed, quote, the runaway pursuit of profit as among the causes of climate change. Is that fair?
So she gave a really passionate speech, and it just goes to show how we need to match the reality of what is happening with real action from local to state to national, and then eventually get global governance to step up where they have been lacking. And so it's correct to say that. We've had perpetrators around the world like the US, like Brazil, like Russia, that are just not doing their job. So this is why we need this type of forum to bring local leaders together to really enforce AOC's message of the Green New Deal, but at a global level. So the global Green New Deal.
And this is her first trip abroad as a lawmaker. The ovation she got, we should know, exceeded that of the U.S. Vice President, former Vice President Al Gore, who is very heavily involved in the environmental activism. It also exceeded the ovation received by the host, the Danish Prime Minister. That's quite significant. She has a name, but she's pushing for this Green New Deal policy. It's facing tremendous pushback here in the U.S. Can you explain a little bit for our international viewers what that is and what hope it has here?
Yeah, absolutely. And it has 4 key principles. One is to recognize that there is a climate emergency happening. It's very real, it's immediate. So we need recognition of that. Part 2 is to make sure that we keep the global warming by the end of the century less than 1.5 degrees Celsius, as was dictated in the Paris Accords. The third part, this is the part that she promotes the most, is we need equitable economies going forward, and we need to ensure that the environmental justice agenda is also advanced. And then the last part is to make sure there's engagement with all stakeholders that have a vested interest in ensuring that the worst case scenarios from climate change don't come into reality. And that's working with youth activists, that's working with scientists, that's working with some of the most disenfranchised communities that are most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. So it's those 4 key principles that she's really been pushing for that this C40 summit really picked up on and wanted to and adopted globally.
You are the U.S. representative for an organization called We Don't Have Time. So I have to ask, how much time do we have?
So the organization is very much taking seriously the reality of how fast we're warming. We have not gotten off the track to 3 degrees Celsius by mid-century. Because of that, we just don't have time. We needed to make these changes and adopt this global Green New Deal yesterday. But we can still act, and you see the passion. You see the youth activists that were at the summit in Copenhagen outside with binoculars saying that we're watching. So the world is watching, so it's so critical that we see leadership across all levels, starting with the mayors, starting locally.
And how do you do that when at the federal level you have so much resistance at the White House with the current president?
Right, and so some of the challenges are some of these mayors are doing incredible things. You have the London mayor who is expanding and electrifying public transport. In Copenhagen, there's ambitious goals to get to net zero carbon emissions by 2025. So if individual cities and mayors can implement some of this stuff, but without the support of government, the nation state governments, then it's almost fruitless because it's as if somebody is smoking next to you and you don't smoke, you're still suffering from their decisions. So it's really imperative to start this groundswell, which is what we're seeing, and really get that support now from the top down, which is what we need.
All right, Sweta Chakraborty from We Don't Have Time, but making time for us. Thank you for that.
Thank you.